Tulo. Let's go right to the phones. Patrick Saunders is with the team in Chicago as they get ready to play the Cubs tonight. Patrick, were you one of those people who felt Tulo might never be dealt because Dick Monfort felt so close to him and because he was a fan favorite and the face of the franchise?
Well, I don't know about never, Les, but I certainly did not see this coming. And I'd like to find anybody who thought it would come last night and come to the Toronto Blue Jays. I thought eventually it might happen, but not the way it happened and when it happened. So I was definitely shocked. And you know what? You gotta say something for Jeff Bridich, for him to basically turn the franchise upside down in the face of what Monfort has said in the past and the way Dick Monfort is as a person. That says something about Bridich's power of persuasion. My hat's off to him. Whether you like the trade or not, Jeff Bridich is shaking up the organization.
Yeah, Patrick, are we to now believe that Dick Monfort is going to allow Jeff Bridich to do what he needs to do to try to rebuild this thing?
I was my opinion, but clearly Monfort listened, and Bridich, I wrote recently, he plays it about as close to the vest as anybody I've ever seen. I have it on good authority that Bridich told people, man, if I start getting leaks out of this organization, heads will roll, and certainly there were no leaks on this one, that's for sure.
Do you think this is the start of the dominoes tumbling, or is this the stop? Is Cargo next?
I do think Cargo's going to be next, Woody. I don't know if my story's up yet. I've been so busy. I talked to Nolan Arenado and just posted a story from Nolan recently, and Nolan thinks that Cargo is going to be next. I have not talked to Cargo yet. I will here in a little while when I get to the ballpark. I'm trying to figure out, guys, if Reyes is staying or if he's going to be flipped. It's kind of tough to tell from Jeff Bridich's presser whether Reyes is here for the next 2 years or if he's just a fly-by-night guy until they consume another trade. I'm thinking Reyes will probably be here for the rest of the season, but there's no guarantees at this point.
What about this, Patrick? Here's what I'm proposing. They take Cargo and Reyes, trade those two to somebody like the New York Mets or the Angels.
Well, you get a bundle for those two.
Another 4 young, wide arms, and have, as I told just before you came on, Les, that I believe if they can get 7 or 8 arms and trade some guys, get 7, 8 guys that are fastball pitchers, that's the way to retool this team. Would you agree or disagree? Do you think there's a possibility? You said Reyes could be here for the rest of the year. They're taking on a big salary there too. So I think they might.
Well, no, I agree with you. Promise that could definitely happen because certainly they need young arms. But having said that, you can't totally gut the offense at Coors Field either. I mean, no matter who they bring in as a young arm, or even if they got an ace. And Nolan Arenado said he was surprised because he thought Tulo was worth at least an ace, and all they got was prospects. But if you totally gut the offense and you still have to rely on pitchers coming up, I'm not sure that's the best combination either. They got to try to find some kind of balance. I still think this is a team in the long run that's ever going to be successful. Is still going to have a very potent offense at home, and whether that means Reyes or Cargo, I don't know. But I don't think you totally remake the franchise and try to make it into a pitching franchise all by itself, because I still think offense is going to have to be a big deal with these guys.
That first segment brought to you by the Harmony Foundation, Colorado's premier treatment facility for drug and alcohol addiction. Tell you more about them in just a second. Patrick, what was the clubhouse like last night as people were starting to understand that Tulo was on his way out? And have you talked to Tulo at all? Have you been able to get in touch with him?
You know what, guys? I have talked with Tulo briefly. That's all I can say at this point. I'm working on some stuff with him. That's all I want to say at this point. The clubhouse last night, bizarre. At first, we didn't know for sure what was going out, coming down. Then we thought, well, is he hurt? And then you could see people going in and out of Walt's office where Tulo was, and we knew it was more than some injury or anything. It was very intense. And then when we saw that things were really getting tense. I went over a couple people, the Rockies, Nolan Arenado, and Cargo, and of course they said, yeah, it's a done deal, and that's when I knew the Cargo was gone. But it was a very tense and very somber place. I think I staked out that clubhouse until probably at least 1:30 in the morning until we finally discovered where the back door was at Wrigley and realized that people had slipped out through the back door. There's a lot of cloak and dagger. If you guys have been to Wrigley, you know all the tunnels and weird configurations there. So it was quite the experience, I must say.
Pat, let's go back to that moment, continue on what you were just saying, that in the ninth inning when he came out, and it's still a game, and there was no indication he'd been injured, the first thought I had is they have made a trade and they don't want him to get hurt in case this game goes into extra innings. And I was a bit surprised that that point wasn't raised on television. I was not listening on radio. But it would have seemed to me that once it was figured out, if you watch some replays, he wasn't hurt going down to first base, that this deal had to be made. You said earlier that you thought that you were somewhat surprised it was Toronto. Why do you think it was Toronto? That they were willing, because they're within 3 games of a wild card, they actually gave up a lot of stuff to get Tulo, even though Arenado may not believe that they got a starter, but they gave up some real good prospects, and they gave up a major league reliever. They gave up a shortstop who has been an all-star in the past.
4 times, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think, guys, and Bradish alluded to this didn't allude to it. He said it in his presser that, they laid the groundwork for this, at least preliminary, in the winter meetings. It lay dormant for a while while all of us were chasing the Mets and the Yankees. This was something that was bubbling underneath the surface. I think the Toronto Blue Jays GM is one of the young Mustangs, if you will, a guy willing to do some things to win now and willing to roll the dice a little bit. And I think that's part of the reason this went down the way it did. I've heard through the grapevine that the Bradish tends to turn off some of the long-time GMs around the league, but some of the younger guys he connects with, and I think that had something to do with it.
It's my impression, and we'll repeat again, that Patrick's writing a story. He has talked to Tulo. He will have that on DenverPost.com, I would assume, shortly, Patrick. I was told, I won't ask you to comment on this, but I was told he was unhappy with the way that it was handled at the end, that he was very chagrined by the way it all went down last night. That's my understanding from my sources, but I think we all need to say that Tulo was a class act here. He handled it all for a period of 10 years going back into the minor leagues, where he withstood all of the criticism, all the talk about moving to first base, moving to third base. He should be traded. I would ask you, in your relationship with him during all that time, to give us your thoughts about how Tulo, A, handled it all these years, and B, how you feel about him leaving town.
Well, I think we've seen Tulo grow up, Woody. I think we've seen through the years Tulo would shoot off from the hip sometime, which was great for us as journalists. He told us how he really felt, got him in a little bit of trouble, got him on the bad side of some fans who didn't like that. Bottom line, we all know this. We know Tulo. He's all about winning, and that's what he's about. And sometimes it comes off as a little prickly. He's certainly not the cuddliest of superstars. I personally like and respect him very much. I think he's handled this whole thing pretty well. Behind the scenes, I think Tulo wanted out. I don't think there's any secret about that. But he decided, as he grew up a little bit and he had his young son Taz and he settled down a little bit, he realized, you know what? I think I just have to handle this professionally and think that things will turn around for me. And that's what has happened. But I can tell you, and you're dead on, Woody, by saying that the way this came down last night in the ninth inning at Wrigley Field after a terrible loss to the Cubs, and suddenly, he's pulled into Walt Weiss's office. Walt Weiss tells him about it. Tulo's pretty upset, and then he gets on a phone call with Jeff Bridich and with Dick Monfort. And from what I understand, Dick Monfort, as you guys played that segment a few minutes ago, was pretty teary-eyed and, oh, this is going to be terrible. Jeff Bridich was very businesslike, buttoned down about it. But I think the thing that disturbs Tulo the most about the whole situation is Dick Monfort and Tulo had a pretty close relationship, and Tulo was always under the impression that he'd be kept in the loop. And I think for the most part he was, until this trade came down so quickly. And I think once that happened, that's what Tulo's resenting, the fact that suddenly he was blindsided. And I don't think he thinks he was a good soldier, and that didn't pay off for him.
Well, Patrick, we know how busy you are. We really appreciate the time. We know you're on your way to the ballpark, and we'll make sure everybody reads you at denverpost.com, all this stuff. Thanks, man.
Okay, guys. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Patrick Saunders of the Denver Post. That segment brought to you by the Harmony Foundation, Colorado's premier treatment program for drug and alcohol addiction. It's located just outside of Estes Park on a private, very nice 45-acre mountain campus. They are insurance-friendly at Harmony, so visit harmonyfoundationinc.com.